you'll see a tape of Robert from that evening. And he's looking into a camera that he doesn't know was on and none of these defendants knew was on. And he's pleading for his life. He's begging, someone tell me what I did wrong. Why is this happening to me?
The prosecution's 7th witness is currently on the stand in the murder trial of David Kingsley, Nicholas Kiefer, and Matthew Gallagher. The 3 former corrections officers face murder and manslaughter charges in the beating death of Marcy Correctional Facility inmate Robert Brooks. The 3 former corrections officers face murder and manslaughter charges. Now, the prosecution's 7th witness, a nurse at Mohawk Correctional Facility, is on the stand testifying right now. Now, our cameras are only allowed in for opening statements and closing statements. This is video from Tuesday's opening arguments in the case. So all of the actual testimony going on during the trial, we are not allowed to record.
It's been a long time, but today we're going to cover the murder trial for the New York State former correction officers who murdered Robert Brooks back on December 9th of 2024. He was being transferred to Marcy because of a fight that he had or problems he was having at Mohawk Correctional. He didn't make it into the correctional facility. He was murdered inside the infirmary where they get triage before they come into a facility by a gang of 10 to 14 correction officers. And there were 2 nurses there during this assault that led to his murder, and they did nothing. And they got no charges.
See, the jury will eventually see that brutal video showing inmate Robert Brooks's beating at the Marcy Correctional Facility, but not yet. The jury first saw, to build a contrast, what an interaction looked like between Brooks and prison workers of the Mohawk Correctional Facility, where he was just before he was transferred to Marcy. That video evidence came along with testimony from people who worked with Brooks at Mohawk, including a sergeant who does not know the 3 charged officers personally. That sergeant told the jury he interviewed Brooks without handcuffs because he felt safe enough to do that. The defense, though, could use some of this same evidence to attack Brooks's character. Brooks had been found with a sock and padlock in his pockets in Mohawk, not together an infraction, but could be used jointly as a weapon, and Brooks may have had drugs as contraband at one point.
In the days before Brooks was transferred to Marcy from Mohawk Correctional Facility, Brooks was in 2 separate altercations with inmates. One on December 7th, where he was taken to the hospital after getting punched in the right side of his face, and another on December 9th, where he was hit again on that same side, despite moving to a different housing unit. Photos showed his injuries. During his testimony, Mohawk Correctional Facility Sergeant David Sayu says when he investigated the second altercation and when asked if he feared for his safety, Brooks responded, "I'm starting to." Brooks was transferred to Marcy that same day.
These guys are fighting it, and they face, upon guilty convictions, 25 to life.
This is a big gamble, not taking the plea and going to trial, especially with that video, and how the jury sees that video is going to impact them tremendously. I don't know that that this gamble is going to pay off for them.
It was a gang of correction officers, 10 to 14. I can't unsee that video of him being murdered on the table, on the examining table, taking him off the table, lifting him up by his neck, kneeing and kicking him in the groin and in his stomach and in his testicles, grabbing him by the throat. I believe he had a hyoid bone broken too in his neck.
This trial is a bit different, as each witness will be questioned by all 3 defense attorneys, one for each correction officer on trial. Earlier in the day, DOCCS Assistant Commissioner Christopher Marticello was questioned on officers' training, specifically in use of force and duty to intervene. Kingsley's attorney Luke Niebusch asked Marticello what use of force was. After giving examples, Marticello explained it should not be permitted before contacting their supervisor. Defense attorneys argued training provided no scenarios about how to intervene or what to do if the supervisors themselves are in the room. Testimony will continue Thursday morning, and at some point during the trial, former COs who pled guilty in this case are expected to take the stand.
Ed, when we saw this, we were outraged, and there was a lot of people like saying to us from the correction side and our friends that are in the law enforcement field, like, oh, you're being a little too critical on these guys. I mean, How could you not be critical when you see the video of this? I don't care who it was. It doesn't matter who was on that video. He was brutally murdered right before our eyes. And
Indeed. I mean, there's a line, and they crossed the line, and they stopped being law enforcement and became criminals when they crossed the line.
To be selected, jurors were told to disregard any video they had already seen about this case.
Today it was submitted as evidence and watched very closely by those same jurors.
Silent video and silence over the courtroom. All eyes focused on the nearest screen, watching the brutal beating captured by officers' unactivated cameras. Only recovered because investigators discovered passively recorded footage. The victim's son, Robert Brooks Jr., in the room, watching just as closely. A front row seat to a courtroom television became a front row seat to his father's death. The defendants getting glimpses of themselves in differing roles. The jury intently watching, but stoically showing no emotion from our vantage point. The gallery of people watching expressing a quiet gasp when Robert Brooks is kicked by former officer Anthony Farina, who's since pled guilty in exchange for 22 years in prison. Some other officers in the video who've admitted to their role in the beating of Robert Brooks are expected to testify for the prosecution against their former fellow co-workers in the days ahead.
10 to 14 New York State Department of Corrections officers, they're supposed to protect the inmates. It's a tough job. Don't get me wrong. It's a real hard job. Most people would turn away from it. I personally turned down corrections. I took the test and I said, this is not for me. It takes a special kind of man or a woman to go inside the walls of these correction facilities, but they're not supposed to go in there and brutalize and murder inmates. And we come to find out that there's a lot of this running rampant in the New York State Department of Corrections and probably throughout many departments across the United States. This is unacceptable. It's barbaric.
People who are in courtrooms every day hear these kinds of arguments, but it's rare for cameras to be allowed at any part of a murder trial. This judge, knowing it's a high-profile trial affecting so many people, allowing us access to show you exactly what happened, and the jury heard it for themselves. First, Bill Fitzpatrick.
You'll see a tape of Robert from that evening, and he's looking into a camera that he doesn't know is on. He's pleading for his life. He's begging someone, tell me what I did wrong. Why is this happening to me?
This trial will not be about whether the officers handled everything perfectly. They didn't. It will be about whether the prosecution proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Officer Kingsley acted with depraved indifference to human life.
And again, this video, and this is not, unfortunately, this is not like a popular thing when you do live streams about this stuff. YouTube doesn't like to put it out there, so they kind of suppress it a bit. But the videos that we showed on the murder of Robert Brooks is what the jury is going to see. That's really the whole case of the state. Is going to bring in a medical examiner to tell the jury about the vicious injuries and that led to his death. At the end of the day, defense attorneys have to defend their clients. But when you look at this video, there's nothing more that can be said. And if this video did not roll, these monsters were making stories up, Ed, to justify.
Well, they put it down in official paperwork.
Yeah, to justify, right?
Right. They did their reports, and their reports conflict with what was on the video.
Again, these monsters were making up a story.
I hope you are as anxious to learn about the horrible death of Robert Brooks as I am in the next few minutes to educate you about it. The evidence will come from that witness stand. Robert was one of about 32,000 adult men and women locked up in the state of New York. Every single one of those inmates, those incarcerated individuals, had one thing in common. Their welfare, their safety was entrusted to sworn correctional officers who took an oath to do their job, wear a badge, wear a flag on their uniform, and protect those 32,000 people, no matter what they were in for.
We are going to be looking at this as each day goes by, and we'll update you guys on how this goes.
Well, let's just pray we can make some effective change here in our society, that the lawmakers do the right thing here and correct some of these loopholes that are out there that allow things like this to keep reoccurring, with that said, thank you for your time and spending your time with us, your precious time. Always be safe, be prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that.